Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. I am sitting here today with Robyn Riedlinger. Robyn is the creator of Speak Affluence and is a sought-after speaker and business strategist who helps leaders transform expertise into influence through values-driven communication, audience psychology, and storytelling. Featured in WBTV, CEO Weekly, and other top outlets, she equips executives, entrepreneurs, and technical experts to craft high-impact presentations that inspire trust, action, and measurable business outcomes. Robyn, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you here. We had a really nice little talk behind the curtain a little bit, and we're going to dive into that in just a moment. But we do like to have an icebreaker on this show. And the question for you is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
Have you ever heard of the movie Leap? It's about a ballerina. Have you heard of it before? No, it's okay. Okay, so this is a movie about a young girl who was raised in an orphanage, and she had this passion for dance. She just wanted to be a ballerina, and she was inspired through a picture. And so she and her friend, they end up going on this journey to Paris, which is where she saw the picture was at. And this entire movie is teaching you the difference between somebody who is like called to do something, somebody who is operating in passion only because of passion versus competition. She had a girl who was like super skilled, highly skilled at ballet. She trained hard and everything, but she lacked the heart and the passion. And so the moral of the story ended up becoming, when you have heart and passion about your dreams and what it is that you're pursuing, it will always beat the competition. Literally. So this is a movie that I like to watch. It's a cartoon that I like to watch when I need to get in touch with my inner child again and remember why I'm here.
I like that, passion and passion, joy, inspiration, what keeps you going because, I really like that, because at the end of the day, when you are very good at something, but you're not passionate about it, the results aren't always the same. Isn't that right?
Yeah, because your motivation is different. Some people are doing it because they have to, or they feel obligated, or they're walking in somebody else's footsteps. It's not really their unique, authentic path. It's not from their heart's desires that they're pursuing that and then monetizing that, hopefully in business. It's not coming from that place. It's coming from a must do, an unoriginal place sometimes.
No, I definitely understand that. Let's slide into the topic at hand a little bit here. Robyn, how would you describe or define procrastination, and what does it mean to you personally?
I love this question, actually. And I like because a lot of people think procrastination is a bad thing. But I don't know if you know this or not. A lot of people can and do perform better under pressure. So I think there's procrastination that's obviously the negative side, which is where you're delaying and delaying and delaying and you're putting it off and your list is just growing and you're not getting anything done because you're distracting yourself from other things and you're not getting obligations taken care of. And then there's strategic procrastination, which is something that I like to use because sometimes I can produce better work under pressure. Sometimes waiting until a tighter deadline allows me to go deeper into it in the moment and cut out all distractions. It's like an isolated time where it's like, I have to get this done. I don't have a choice. So I'm big on deadlines. I set deadlines for myself. And sometimes I'll be in, what is it, behind the eight ball? Is it better to be in front of the eight ball or behind the eight ball? You get where I'm
I
coming.
think it's behind the eight ball. I think it's
Okay.
behind.
So you want to be behind the eight ball, right? You want to be in charge of the next move. And then there are times where I kind of let it get a little close because it kind of keeps it exciting for me. It keeps me on my toes. So I'll intentionally place a deadline and then add pressure, or depending on what the task is, I may just plan it out. But overall, I think procrastination is a tool. It can be a distraction tool or it can be a strategic tool that's used to apply pressure at the right time and right when it's needed.
I like that, and it's true. Some people they that falls into the crisis maker. It's a very bad title, a very bad label, I think, but it's the one where it describes where you really it's not urgent until it's like urgent, and a lot of us fall into that in school and high school because we just don't. It's just either not interesting or not important to us, right? But it is a valid technique, and many programmers, well, I guess coaches like yourself, programmers, coaches, and well, even artists sometimes do it because they feel like they get that extra burst of creativity to get
Right.
that done at the same time.
Exactly.
While we were talking beforehand, you mentioned something very interesting to me. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and what you're doing right now?
So, right now, I am a speaker and a public speaking coach. But for the past 2 years, I spent most of my time in the coach's chair more than anything. And so, this is a year where I get back on the stage, I get back on platforms. But originally, it started from a vision. I know that earlier you were asking, what were some of the things that have inspired me in my life? I think little doses of people have inspired me along the way, and it maybe makes a culmination of one big inspiration. But ultimately, I really do think if you're connected to a higher source, we get inspiration from this higher source, our higher self. If only we listen to our intuition, if only we tune in, tap in, and follow through. And so, my entire journey with speaking and communication in general came from when I worked at a speech therapy company as the office manager. And I tell this story quite a bit because a lot of times people who pursue public speaking today, they come from an acting or a performance kind of background, right? They want it to be on Broadway, they want it to be on stage. And my story looks a little bit different. I was managing the practice. I did not work with the patients, but I got to see what it was like for people to spend their entire youths not being able to access their voice from uncontrollable diagnoses, right? You've got autism, speech impediments. There are things that people are born with that are outside of their control that prevent them from using this gift that I like to call your voice. And so I used to set up our annual company events. And it was when I was setting up the event that it was like this snapshot into my future where I was on stage giving a presentation. But from what I could see, I was rehearsing the script. And it was a really big event that I was preparing for. Now, the funny thing about this journey is, you remember how you said earlier, it's not linear, right? It's up, down, up, down. When you accept the calling that's on your life, I do believe you're asking for some sort of extreme adversity. I think there's a reason why things come to us. And then if you choose it, you're choosing a very unique path. That's not for just anyone. And so while there are some people that I know who they used to get asked to speak on stage, no problem. For me, it's been a really difficult journey. I've had to overcome a lot of stuff. I've had to do a lot of healing, a lot of breakthroughs. And this is something that I bring into my coaching sessions today. So I can relate to people a lot better because of the adversity that came with accepting this calling of being a speaker and a coach.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Robin. It's a very interesting story, and I love how you point out that we don't have to be on Broadway, or we don't have to be in the movies, or we don't have to be a politician to have a voice.
Not at all.
You mentioned that you had some challenges that you went through. What do you think was the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
Family. Sometimes I think we're placed in families and we're nothing like our family. And then how do you navigate that dynamic, right? Where you're placed in a family where it feels like you're the outcast. You're the one that looks different, acts different, has a different energy level, has different dreams, goals, and ambitions, and isn't afraid to pursue them. They talk about the black sheep in the family, and I can't help but feel like that was me. I really do believe that. And so I would say family was the hardest thing, getting back to the foundation of some of the programming that gets in the way that would block somebody from becoming successful. The old programming that if other people aren't willing to do the work or evolve at the pace that you are, you outgrow these people. And that includes your family. That includes the people that are closest to you. But we have this belief system that we're obligated to participate in a certain way, even when it's direct adversity towards your goals, or it's like there's a lot of negativity coming from that source. The hardest thing I ever did was distance myself in order to pursue this. And I just gave myself permission to grow and become the best version of myself and the biggest version of myself. And I'm still nowhere near where I'd like to be. But without a doubt, just having a family that maybe doesn't get it. They talk about that a lot in entrepreneurship, having a family that maybe doesn't get it, or maybe there's some jealousy or some envy that's present instead of support, love, and nurturing energy. I think that was the hardest, seriously, one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through.
I understand completely, and I understand where you're coming from. Many people go through that. I think I was kind of the opposite. My family was always kind of supportive in that sort of regard. But normally, and this ties into something you said earlier. Normally, when we look at actions from people, it's either done out of love or out of a call for love. And we talked about fear. And I'm just curious, did you ever explore that? Because you said you had a very unique sort of relationship with your fear now. How much of that do you think was fear based back?
All of it. So when you're raised in certain childhood environments, or no, have you ever heard the saying like the body keeps the count? So it doesn't matter how much psychological work we do when it's programmed into our body as well. So what would end up happening is I would do all this mental work. I have a life coach, she's a psychotherapist. We would process psychologically, subconsciously the things that were going on. But because of certain aspects from my home environment, my childhood environment, they were programmed into my nervous system, into my body, there was a lagging for a while. So fear lived in places that took a long time to get to and allow it to release. Like I had to befriend my fear on all levels, mind, body, and spirit. This is fear related to money, fear related to success, fear related to rejection, fear related to being seen, fear related to using my voice and people not liking what I have to say or being judged for what I have to say, just simply being myself. Because from an environment that wasn't good all the time, you're kind of conditioned to think, oh, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I'm not worthy of the love, the success, the passion, the amazing, healthy, incredible relationship. Maybe I'm not worthy of these things because in your environment, you're shown to be smaller, to not be that. So you have to unpack all this stuff. It's like our life purpose. Like when you go through that stuff, like as a kid, I think you have to spend your entire life just like going back, pulling it out of the archives, reprocessing it, putting it back in the right place, giving people back what's theirs, keeping what's yours. It's like systemic. It's very like, or systematic, I meant to say, how you have to process and move through the fear and replace it with faith. That's the real thing that saved me, right? When there is fear present, there is usually an absence of faith. There's a lack of trust in the process. And so, yeah, I've had to develop a lot of modalities to process and move through some of those fears, some of which were not even mine, believe it or not.
No, I like that you went there, and it's true that a lot of times we don't even consider the connection between mind, body, and spirit. And I like how you said that the double F, the taking fear and turning it into faith, finding your purpose and stepping into that. It's often not an easy process, and I'd be interested in hearing when you started on your journey. When did you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you were on the right?
Ooh, what a great question, Chris. How did I know I was on the right path? Because every time I kept moving towards it, I kept being met with a type of resistance telling me, I can't do it. You can't do it. They say the start of the journey begins with a no, a rejection. It begins with a person telling you, you are not capable. You are not worthy. This is not for you. You cannot have this. It usually starts with that on this type of, right? Some people, they can just walk right into it. It's super easy for them. La, 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 la. They go right to the top. No big deal. But for others, it's the biggest, steepest uphill climb of your life. And you're not allowed to give up. You're just simply not allowed to give up. So it probably would have started as soon as I chose it. When I got the vision was not necessarily the time I chose it. I had at that time tried to go out on my own and start my own business and business operations. But because I didn't know how to sell, I didn't know proper sales, I didn't know how to negotiate contracts, I didn't know how to speak up for myself, I wasn't generating any leads. So I ended up getting a corporate job. In corporate, I was facilitating workshops. I had an incredible team, like so supportive, such an incredible manager, like team lead, like everything about it just fostered the perfect environment for me to grow. And I launched my speaking career in corporate. And it was when I went to my manager to say to her, I love what I do. I'm great at my job, but I want more. And I want it to be in public speaking. And my God, when I chose this, I was taken on the most insane path from that point. It was almost like I had to get a backpack, I had a couple tools with me, and it was like into the dark forest from there. you just gotta be ready. You got spiritual warfare. You got people that you think love you, care about you, turning against you. It's almost like you're in one of those games where it's like you're just constantly like fighting it. And then they want to tell you like these are aspects of yourself. So it really flips it on its head, right? If these are aspects of yourself, oh my gosh, what a journey. It became spiritual instantly. Yeah.
No, I love the way that you say that, and you know, you've learned so much along the way, and you know, I guess the question I have is, what do you think was the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself during the journey?
Are you ready for this? I had the hardest time accepting that evil existed in the world and including inside of myself. The darkness exists in all of us, but we're always given the choice to choose it or not. And so until I befriended my own shadow, what they call it, my own darkness that lives within, I wasn't able to fully embody the light that was also within because you have to have both. We exist with both. And then we're always given the choice to choose which one for us. So, what life would give me as a way to work through this and to accept this part of myself is people who specifically represented the darkness in some capacity. And I was meant to observe, accept, some cases love anyways, and keep moving and accept that this is a real, true part of life. Everybody carries a dark side, but not everybody's willing to see it. And so the hardest part or the most significant part for me was recognizing that when it shows up out here, it's because there's a need to go within and look at it inside of myself because I'm, in the sense, accepting, creating, I'm responsible for some aspect of this.
No, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll be honest with you, that is one of the hardest things that, you know, I still work with, just because, and it's not even necessarily my own shadow. It's the fact that we need to have, I guess I've sort of called it creators and destroyers. And you talk about resistance. And the thing is that that resistance is what kind of pushes us forward and pushes us to do better. Because if we didn't have that, if we didn't have the destroyers in the world, the creators don't want to, you know, destroy what they built. And actually, you're going to laugh. But the best story, and I had my mind blown by this because I didn't know it. I think it took like 37 years before I came. Somebody actually told me what this was about. Um, what do you think the story of the Three Little Pigs is really about?
Different versions of ourselves, maybe? Is that where you're going with that? No. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to jump in and say the wrong thing, of course, but
No, nothing's wrong. I just want to make that clear. There's nothing wrong here. It's just a different perspective.
I don't know. I kind of want to just hear your perspective. Yeah.
So, I mean, we can all agree, and everybody generally agrees they get to the first meaning, which is kind of resilience, right? Wolf comes in, blows down the house, you build it back better. Wolf comes in, blows down the house, you build it back better. But what we don't look at is that if the wolf didn't exist, those pigs would have been content just to live in that straw house for their entire lives, probably.
You
And they
don't think the
probably would
wolf
have had for snacks
represents
for
a
that.
part of ourselves?
Well, either internally or externally,
Okay.
whichever way you want to look at it, right? And you know, there's a reason I don't have hair. I used to stress out a lot. And the this was actually pointed out to me too, that there's actually a Buddhist practice where they will take hours to make these very intricate designs in the sand, and then they will just wipe it all away. And that's to get us used to the fact that as we're on this journey, as we're going through and we're building things, we have this sense of pride, we have this sense of accomplishment, we have this sense of, and then the dark side to that is complacency, stagnation, because we think that we've done all we need to do, and it prevents us from moving forward, and then leads us to be not excited about life anymore, right? So if we didn't have the destroyers in the world, if we didn't have the destructive forces, both internal and external, we wouldn't go anywhere.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. It's all a part of the process because a lot of people are terrified to shed an old identity that's not serving them. You know, we talk about, oh, I want to be this person, I want to have this, I want to do this, whatever it is in life. But you got to realize that the person you are right now, the reason why you don't have it is because you're not willing to release whatever is not meant for you right now. And the process of change is excruciatingly painful sometimes. It is one of the most brutal things to allow yourself to fully to transfer, because it can happen on a cellular level, right? Like you cannot be the same person. If you want to be a millionaire, you want to hit 7, 8, 9 figures in business, do you honestly think you can be the exact same person you are right now? There's absolutely no way. You have to be able to call in that level of wealth. You have to create space for it. Your nervous system has to handle it. You have to build a different relationship with that level of wealth. Same thing with love and intimacy. Okay, like people, we crave it, we yearn for it, but when it shows up, it's a lot. It overrides how do I say it? It like overstimulates us in a way that we can't handle it because It's maybe something that we're not used to. So who do you have to become in order to hold space for that? Who do you have to become in order to hit whatever that number is in business, or whatever that love frequency is that you want, in order to call in the best partner, and then allow yourself to keep it, because calling in is one thing, keeping it is another. Yeah.
That was just so profound what you just said. Um, and it goes out on so many different levels too, because when we're trying to level up and we hit these resistances, and you talked about identity, and I think that most people just kind of forget that we aren't our jobs, we aren't our relationships with our spouses, we aren't fathers, mothers, wives, husbands, we aren't CEOs, we aren't all these things, and people get so lost when these things, relationships, etc., go away, because we have this dichotomy in us that we understand that nothing lasts forever, and yet for whatever reason, we just expect it to always be the same. We demand that it stay the same, but we know that it's not.
It poses a question that most people will struggle to answer after there's been an identity shift. Do you know what the question is? Who am I? The magic question. If I am none of these things and all of these things at once, but who am I? Truly. And I think you get to choose whoever you want to be in whatever system you're currently positioned in, because no matter how much we try to escape the system, whatever system you're in, you still have to identify with something. You know, a lot of people talk about we need to get rid of the ego. I don't think that's always the best way to go, getting rid of the ego. I think having a healthy ego is good. I think that's a better way to go. Having an unhealthy ego will destroy everything. But if you have a healthy ego and you're clear on who you are and your identity, and you feel strong about that, like you feel good about it, it really resonates with you. Like, okay, I'm no longer the hairdresser I was 10 years ago. I'm no longer the person that used to do business operations. I am now a speaker and a speaker coach, and it feels good in my body to say that. That tells me I'm in the right identity right now. Who I'll be in 10 and 20 years, God only knows. I don't know. But I think it's also possible to identify with many things. The mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the CEO. These are different hats that we put on that enable us to carry out a certain role. But through change and through stepping into whatever that is, like if you go from single, never been in a relationship, to all of a sudden now you're like getting married, you're a husband, you're a father, you're all of that, like your identity is going to shift drastically because your responsibilities have just changed. Now you have to give of yourself in a different way, and that's going to change you, hopefully for the better, you know? Yeah.
So let me ask you something, because, and I want to hear your take on this. When we slide into these identities and when we lose them, the reason that we, fly into a depression, the reason we feel lost, the reason we feel so hurt, is because we think that those things are parts of us. Like our, and this is the interesting thing. Our identity, as you said, it's not a part of our core. And yet when we lose it, it's almost like if you cut off an arm, you feel like you've lost a part of yourself. And how do you reconcile that with, well, okay, that's not who I am anymore, right? And then where do they need to go to kind of, because again, that question, who am I, is too big. Where do they go to sort of start with that?
Chris, that is one of the most loaded questions. So you're speaking about, let me just make sure I'm clear on what you're asking. It's almost like the in-between phase, like the transition from this person to this person. How do I close the gap? There's like a cognitive dissonance that takes place because you're not quite there yet. You're on the way to being there. So it's the manifestation process at play in a way, which always starts in the mind. It always starts with a vision. But then they don't realize, they, meaning whoever's in the process of manifestation, does not realize that in order to manifest and step into, you can't just take on more and nothing change. You have to let go and create space for it to come in, depending on how great of a manifester you are. Because if you're manifesting something big, you have to have space in order for it to come in. It only makes sense. We only have so much to our energy field as one person. So you talk about depression. This is another thing. Now, some people might not believe this, because some people cling to depression like it is an identity. I am depressed. I am depressed. They tell themselves this. They take it on as if this is who I am. Let me just accept this as it is, not realizing that every time you repeat that to yourself, you're claiming it as your own. So if everything out here is in the quantum and it's just all floating around, and You get the choice to choose based on what you're consciously creating from your mind. And it's just floating around. And you're like, I'm going to choose depression today. I'm going to choose depression today. I'm going to keep choosing depression. The problem is the person's not taking responsibility for the fact that they keep choosing depression instead of choosing happiness over here. Instead of maybe choosing anger, choose a different emotion. Maybe choose something completely different that you haven't felt in a long time, because we always have access to an emotional range of options. We don't have to stay depressed. It's a choice. In my opinion, it's a choice. It can feel debilitating. It can feel like it's not a choice, but your mind is choosing it, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Like it's still actively choose something. And a lot of times, if you find that you are depressed, you don't have to say, I am depressed. I feel depressed. Feels different than I am depressed. I feel depressed. What can I do to get myself out of this? And it's like the language that we're saying, you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. I am an angry person. Oof, I feel a lot of anger right now. I feel a lot of sensation in my body and I don't know how to process this right now. I feel a lot of emotion. I feel overstimulated right now. And then removing yourself from whatever is creating that inside of you. And then maybe going back when you feel ready to visit it again, because it's always an activation to change. Yeah, I can go really far and deep into this, but I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
No. You answered it that very nicely, and I appreciate that you brought up that labeling thing, and it's actually one of the reasons that I don't tend to agree with locally the way that therapy is conducted, because they do tend to label right away, and there's a couple of things I don't like about that. And once you label something, which is very interesting to me, once you label something, it's like automatically you stop trying to understand it. You stop trying to work with it. You stop trying to get it. When somebody goes in and they aren't sure how to feel, and I've seen this happen. Okay, I've seen this happen. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I've seen it happen. They
Mm-hmm.
said they're like, I don't feel quite right. I don't feel quite like myself. They go to a therapist or to a coach, and they sit down, they start talking, and within the first session, I've seen this once. Okay, I'm not saying it's all like this, but then the person says, "You're depressed," and then the other person is like sighs, almost in like relief, like now they've got the label that, oh, I don't need to understand it. I don't need to do the work.
Okay, I have so many thoughts that come to mind with what you just said, because the mind, like, we can't deny what the mind and the ego needs. It needs answers. Otherwise, you sit there in confusion and you're going back and forth like ping pong in your brain. Like, what is this? What is this? What is this? So you mentioned a dichotomy that gets created, and it's one of the worst places to be in. But also, then the releasing of a need to identify takes a different type of practice and work, meaning you don't have to cling or attach to anything that comes into your existence. That person can say, you're depressed, and be like, yeah, maybe there's a little depression there, but it doesn't mean I am. It can always change. It can always move, but we cling to it because, like, I had a friend, she clung to it. That was like a part of her identity. Every day, that's what she said. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let you be who you think you are until you're ready to move out of that space. Because to your point, maybe she needed that as a source of validation for what it is that she's feeling. But I think a lot of times it comes from a lack of self-forgiveness, a lack of accountability, a lack of responsibility in a situation. I think there's still an avoidance of an issue at play. And so we take medications and we cling to labels that justify what's going on when it's deeper than that. It's not on the surface. It's deeper than that. You have to go to where the source of the feeling is coming from. And maybe it starts with saying, it's this. Okay, well, if it's this, now I can work on it a little bit. Then ask yourself, is it still that? Did it move a little bit? That's therapy, right? Is loosening that up a little bit and then allowing it to become something else or to disappear altogether.
No, that's very well said. But I think that what you hit on a couple of very good points there. That the responsibility and the accountability, right? But there's something else in there too. It's that when we feel bad, we don't want to feel bad, and we want that sort of instant fix, right? So, and things take time, right? But I mean, we live in an instant gratification society, and it's not our fault. We're conditioned by social media to have, instant gratification, instant validation when we get likes, when we get dislikes. So it's not necessarily our fault. But it's much like your own speaking clients, I'm sure. When they come in, they're like, "Hey, Robyn, I want to speak today. I want to speak right now, this afternoon." What do you say to that?
Some, okay, well, we'll do our best. Like some people, they do put on the pressure, right? They have an engagement coming up and they want to become better overnight. And it's skill. Skills don't happen overnight. You have to sharpen it and you have to keep trying it. Have you ever read the book Chop Wood, Carry Water?
Heard of it.
It's
I have to admit that I've heard of it, but I haven't read.
excellent. It's really short. It's an easy like listen if you listen to it on Audible. And what it's talking about is it's all about archery. And there's a sensei that's teaching this young learner to do archery. And they say it takes 10 years to master a craft. 10 years. So the whole purpose is you have to chop wood, carry water. You have to walk through the mud a little longer. You have to keep sucking a little longer, because then he ended up challenging the sensei in this practice because he's like, oh, I can do it too. And he's trying to challenge this expert when all the sensei has to do is get in front of it, and he gets it every time. Bullseye every single time. In fact, he proved him wrong and got it twice in the bullseye, like back to back. When the guy that was being trained, he's missing. It's all over the place because it takes time to develop a skill. It doesn't happen overnight. So even when somebody comes to me, the best I can do is meet them where they are and just take them a little bit further. And maybe that gives them what they need. But the truth is, skills take time. And they say it takes 10 years to master a craft. So you can't quit. You can't give up. You have to stick with it, even in the hard times, even when you suck, even when you're sad, you have to stick with it. Yeah, that's what came to mind. Chop wood, carry water. Like they can come to me like that all day long. But the truth is, like, that's not how skills work. That's not how mastery works. Mastery takes time.
I love that you brought that up, and I'd like to tie that into what you said earlier about when you were talking about your own story about the connection between mind, body, and spirit, and how some of it was actually stuck in the body, right? So it does take between 7 and 10 years for every cell in your body to sort of, die off and be replaced, right?
Yeah. It does. It's an entire like cellular, what do they call it? Like transmutation that has to take place. Really, I think that something that's really important to consider here, and this does tie into public speaking, like for anybody who does want to do it, it comes down to the nervous system. So something that I've learned when going deep into healing work, spirituality, and then learning how to heal the nervous system of anything that you don't realize is there until you get to it. The only way to really access and process whatever's going on in the nervous system is in a really safe and still environment. It takes concentrated effort, intentionality, and the allowance of whatever is in your body to be fully released. And that helps with the transmutation and the change that we all need, because it's this stored stuff that we're carrying with us that we don't even realize is there, that needs to be released in order for us to embody the new version of ourselves, you know? Because the worst thing, my life coach calls it spiritual bypassing. The worst thing is when you try to get to higher levels of success, but there's something going on inside of you that's almost like forcing you to tap out. Like there's a ceiling there. You can't break through the ceiling. And a lot of times there's further development that's necessary beyond the mind. We can learn a bunch of stuff, but if the body's not there, the spirit's not ready, if that stuff isn't in place, it's really hard to embody that next version of ourselves.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The question I have that comes to my mind, so is speaking kind of like any other practice, whether we talk archery, whether we talk martial arts, does it develop I can't call it, I guess I can't call it a muscle memory, but I mean, it'd be something along that lines, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think if anybody's been bullied or had anybody, talk down to them and they've received it, this is programming that goes into our mind and into our body. And so when it comes time for you to step in front of a group of people or talk, all this stuff starts to come to the surface, which is what creates an adrenaline effect, because now we don't feel safe, because at one point, our body, more than anything, remembers us being in a situation that looked kind of like this, that's causing us to be triggered. It looked kind of like this. We're not currently in this situation, but our body is alerting us that, oh, we've been here before. Watch out. It could go wrong. And so a lot of times what we're experiencing is adrenaline, the fight or flight response. Speaking, I think in order to regulate that in the best way possible, it requires multiple opportunities of exposure to positive experiences around it. So you can override the negative programming with the positive programming and see that when you get on stage and when you get in front of people, number one, people want to hear what you have to say. You're actually helping people. People are, in fact, inspired, and you get that positive reinforcement back from doing it. I think having like more of the positive experiences in time will allow that muscle memory in a way to kick in to where, okay, it's just another speaking gig. It's just another podcast. It's just another thing. Because I've already proven to myself, I've built the self-trust. Number one, I'm going to get in front of better people than ever before, right? I'm going to get in front of people who see me, who want to hear about me. They want to know about me. And, you know, there's a positive reciprocity that comes from them. I'm going to intentionally put myself there. And then two, I'm going to prove to myself over and over again that this is a good thing. That speaking, when you're going out in public speaking and you're doing that, you're usually stepping into leadership and you're there to help people just on a larger scale, right? There's the one-to-one and then there's the one-to-many. Your biggest difference is, okay, so this is bigger than me. It's more than me. It's for you all. I'm here to give. And I'm comfortable with giving in the way that I give. Yes.
I really love that. Robyn, this has been a very great conversation. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything you feel we should have covered but didn't cover today?
I think the biggest thing is, obviously I'm in the field of public speaking. And if there is anyone listening to this, or you yourself want to do more public speaking, we already know it's like, what is it? The top fear in the world. Most people are absolutely terrified of public speaking. And I think the best thing you can do is at least try it with a new mindset, with a new intention, so you can develop the self-mastery and the leadership skills that's necessary so we can evolve better, right? I think it's a really great, in a way, healing experience. I think it's a great skill to have. You can't lose from developing this skill. And I do think everybody, especially if you're an entrepreneur, should be using this as a business strategy. And so if fear is something that's blocking you or keeping you from doing it, I do think you're leaving money on the table. I think you're missing out on a ton of opportunities, not just extrinsically, but intrinsically. It can change your life, literally. So I think that would be the main thing I would throw in there.
Excellent. Well, what a strong note to end the show on. Just before we go, Robyn, what is the best way for our listeners to maybe reach out and learn more about you, or maybe contact?
Yeah. So my Instagram is at Robyn Riedlinger, at ROBYNRIEDLINGER. There's also my email. You can email me, Robyn, ROBY.
Excellent. And just again, to all our listeners, don't worry about grabbing a pencil and pen and trying to, rewind and write that all down. We are going to have that in the show notes for you, so it'd be easy for you to find. Robyn, thank you once again for just being on the show and sharing all those little nuggets. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.